Hey gang, it's Sean from the Fidget Fix, and today we are very honored to have Jamie Acker from LIC EDC. Obviously, me, whatever. Saying we makes it sound bigger, but I'm trying to expand the roster of people I interview. Every time I interview, I learn a little bit more about the fidget community and the makers, and of course, I like to hit up people who, make an impact in the community. And so, Jamie, that's definitely you. So I'm excited about this one. So honestly, dude, thanks for giving me your time. Thanks for giving all of us your time. I know a lot of people are kind of excited to see this one. So let's start. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me here. Excited about this. Looking forward to it, Sean. Thanks for having me on.
LIC EDC. Before the intro, you had mentioned something about when you came up with the name, and so what's the story there? And more importantly, what did your wife think of the name when you first came up with it?
So before we started, as Sean was saying, we were talking about. He wanted to know, how do you pronounce it? Is it LIC? And I was like, it's funny because when I was decided, okay, I'm making something, I need to have a brand. Is it going to be Jamie's Designs? What's it going to be? And I'm like, you know what? I feel a strong connection to the neighborhood I live in, which is Long Island City in Queens. So I was like, you know what about just LIC EDC? And I, show it to my wife, and she's like, that's it. That we're gonna read that as lick a dick,
And yet you stuck with it. Dude, that is so cool. I had no idea. So that actually, now it's not surprising. I had no idea because, again, I've always sort of maintained that I'm pretty early into the community. Like I only really started like last September, or like a year last September. So about a year and a half now. But I noticed you had posted in the group at one point the new stickers or slaps, and they actually had the bridge on there.
Oh yeah.
And so that's the relationship then to the name.
Yeah.
And those are fantastic, dude. Like for somebody that grew up with, in the 80s, seeing like tags and stuff everywhere, like those are fantastic. I love that sticker design.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. The whole thing behind the Queensboro Bridge, which it is in my neighborhood. It is in Long Island City. But the reason why it's so important to me is because it's what I see every day when I go to the studio. I look out my window and there's that bridge connecting Queens to Manhattan right over there. So it's like, you know what? This is something I'm seeing every day. It's something that, that I kind of want to be a part of the brand.
That's pretty. So I'm kind of I'm a bit surprised by it, but like in a happy way, because I had no idea that's where the name came from. That is, that's such a cool reason to build a name. Like, is that common knowledge? Like, do most of the people in the groups and stuff know that that's why that's what the LIC stands for?
I don't really keep it hidden. If anybody asks, I'm like, yeah, I live there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, take a screenshot of like Google Maps and be like, there's me. That's right.
Wow, that's awesome, actually. So okay, so it's not like a dick, which is good to know.
I don't know why I even told you that. All right.
Well, you told everybody that, so that's great. Is this, and I mean, a lot of people typically, there's always kind of like the standard questions, right? And a lot of us want to know, so has this become your full-time job? Do you have a regular job and this is just something on the side?
Yeah, no, this is not my full-time job. This is just something that I started out as a hobby, kind of like, something I've always wanted to do, and kind of did it, and had like a 3D printer sitting in my room, like where I work, where it's like probably shouldn't be sitting next to, these toxic resin all day long. And ultimately ended up moving that stuff out of the apartment. I had to end up getting space for it for health reasons. But yeah, I have a full-time job, work, regular hours. Fortunately, I'm able to work from home, so I can also at times work from the studio. But it's no, I honestly, it's been a struggle for me lately, just because I have so many things I want to work on that I can't because I don't have the time to. When I was doing it from home, I'd be able to run the printer during the day, do my day job, maybe during a break, take it out. Let me turn off my phone. It's going crazy. Maybe turn it off. Now it's like, okay, I might have a few hours at the end of the day to go to the studio to actually work on something. So if I want to make some resin prototypes or something, Like, here's an example. Like, I can't just like pop it on right next to me. I have to be in the studio. So I find myself at times working from the studio where I can have that going on in the background where I'm also doing my day job. But it's a lot of people have been reaching out. Hey, I would love it if you could make this. Are
Yeah.
you going to have any more resin buttons, any more resin spinners? And it's like, it's incredibly time consuming to it's all pretty much hand done. So it's like I am hand finishing everything. It is a labor of love. I put a lot of time into it. So it's like I wish I had the time to put into doing more of that stuff because it's what people are asking for.
Well, so we'll actually jump to that in a little bit, but
Mhm.
just to sort of back up for a bit. The first question, and I'm always kind of curious about the link between sometimes people's jobs are related, right? To sort of being creative and doing stuff. Other times, people's jobs have nothing to do at all with building something or making something,
Mhm.
and it's more of like it's more of a release, right? At the end of the day, they love kind of coming to this very creative industry. So, what field are you in? If you're even comfortable with talking about it, like I don't know, are you comfortable saying like what is your job? What do you do for a living? And does that kind of bridge to doing what you do now?
Yeah, sure, not a problem. I feel like every job I've had has kind of like led me to this point of
Right.
making stuff, right? So it's like what I do right now. I'm a user researcher and strategist. So working a lot with the business to understand, hey, what are your goals, and who are your users, and then working with users to try and understand, what their behaviors are, what their pain points are, what they're trying to accomplish, coming back and being like, hey, this is what the users are actually trying to do. This is who they actually are. This is what they need. And here, let's build a roadmap together. So that's the type of stuff that I do now. And a lot of it is usability, which, I think kind of goes like hand in hand with spinners and stuff like, ergonomics and things like that. But prior to that, I was originally an industrial designer, which
Oh, okay.
is yeah. So for those that don't know, that's just physical products. So I designed physical products, and specifically when I first started out, I was in the toy industry.
Like what?
So
What toys?
Fisher Price, I had a couple of internships there. So
Wow.
that's kind of where I learned to do a lot of 3D modeling for actual physical products. And when I'm there, I it's interesting how I ended up getting that internship. I was okay. I'm gonna have to backtrack a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. Please go ahead.
found okay. I was in college. Magazine, open it up. It's like CG something 3D modeling. I was into that. All things 3D, all things just computer graphics back then. Still into it. Anyway, looking at it, I see this dude, a whole big article written about him, and I'm like, I want to do what he's doing. So I reached out to the guy, and I miraculously he answered me back, and he's like, "This is what you need to do. Don't just focus on digital. You want to focus on if you're going to be doing 3D. You want to get hands on and do some sculptural type stuff." So I ended up speaking with people at school. I was like, "Listen, this is what I want to be doing." They let me create a special major which combined digital and physical. So I took a lot of sculpting classes and a lot of 3D modeling classes and kind of married the two. And I was spent a lot of time in the there's a foundry in the school, and
What school was this? Sorry.
um, it was University of Buffalo.
Okay.
And so I spent a lot of time in the foundry. And this one guy who was a sculptor at Fisher Price, he for a personal project was working on using the forge there, and ended up connecting with him. And it's like, yeah, why don't you we're looking for interns. So I ended up getting an internship at Fisher Price where I started to learn all this like advanced 3D modeling software and 3D printing and just like all this really cool technology that it wasn't very accessible back then.
When was
Where
this? When was
this
back then?
age me, man, I don't even know. Let's see, it was a long time ago.
Dude, I'm 51. I'm gonna be 52 this summer. So trust me, age is not really a sensitive subject at this point. But
Mhm.
like, was this
It was early 2000s.
okay?
Yeah, so it was a long time ago. And or maybe late 90s, I don't even know, man. But Anyway, did that. And then they're like, the internship was ending and they're like, this is, maybe you should look into industrial design. What is that? And they're like, it's what you've been doing here. You've
Right.
been doing. I'm like, cool. And then, I ended up going to grad school for it, where I learned a lot of really key things that I think have made me successful, specifically with doing the resin model. So I took like, shop classes. I was a city boy, I never knew how to use any of these machines. So now I'm like using shop machines. I'm hand making models of like, toasters and hair dryers, and like, making it look like a legit real product. And so it's like, okay, so I'm learning all these finishing techniques, graduate from school, did a whole bunch of different industrial design things, ended up landing in jewelry, where I ended up 3D modeling, doing CAD for jewelry for a long time. And so I had access to CNC machines. But those machines were cutting metal molds to just injection molds. So we're cutting these little tiny metal molds, these little tiny parts, 3D printing, laser, like all the stuff that if I had now, I'd be like, I'd be able to pump things out. It's like, that's years ago. That's a lifetime ago. Don't have access to any of that stuff anymore, but I still have all the knowledge that I learned just from like, living through it all.
Well, that's interesting. So I would think the fact that it was jewelry really kind of lends itself to creating in a small form factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just I'm sure when people would first start out, they would just think of making big things, but the fact that you were used to making these very tiny things, and I guess crafting something so small, kind of makes sense that you would end up now doing what you do, because that size is still like pretty small.
Yeah, I mean, and it's exactly what I had been thinking. It's like, I love this world that we're in, this fidget world. I've been like, a part of it, just like as, just enjoying it, never making it. I'm always in the back of my mind. It's like, you can do this. You can make this. You could do this in your sleep. Just do it already. Around the time when the Fidget Cube came out, that was my gateway drug, was the Fidget
Okay.
Cube.
Yeah. Yeah.
For many people. So there it is. Got, I saw that they just put together this amazing ad for it on Kickstarter, and I was like, I need to have that. Ended up getting it, and then it's like, what else is there? I need more. Searching around, I found the subreddit for spinners, browsed it for the longest time, couldn't imagine spending, the amounts of money for these
Yeah.
metal spinners. I'm like, what? Why? And I ended
Absolutely.
up getting one, and then it was like, I get it now. I get it now.
So
So that.
actually, okay, so you went into the gateway. I find a lot of, for us it was our kids, like my wife and I, we had, especially at the time, right, when the fidget cubes came out and everything, and of course we got them that, and then spinners showed up in every single store, always like the plastic boomerang style, like that, the typical kind of design that was, I'm sure, copied by someone's actual design, and then cheap knockoffs found their way in the stores. So you actually went from, or is it fair to say then that you went from the clicky, sort of tactile push and do things cube, and then it sounds like then you found spinners and you're like, oh shit, this is a whole new thing. And did it rest there? Was it just like, I'm a spinner guy from now on?
Oh no, my collection is everything. Like, I've got spinners, sliders, haptics, you name it. If it's something that you can keep your hands busy with, and that
So
will annoy my wife, then I
yeah.
have it.
Oh, dude, trust me. Anybody with any kind of a partner that is not into fidgets, all have that same story, right? It's always like, find me the quietest thing I can use while sitting on the couch next to them while we're watching TV, because they hate everything else.
Mhm.
So at that point, you're using these things, you're exploring the world, and then how long did it take you from the entry point into the fidget community to the point where you sort of go, you know what? I know I can make stuff. I used to make stuff. Maybe I should try to make a fidget. And then you look around, I would assume you look around and go, I have nothing to make a fidget with. Or, I'm assuming you didn't have any machinery lying around at the time. So what was the genesis of that? Like, how did you
Mhm.
how did you go? Like, I'm assuming, obviously at first you had to say, well, I want to make one of these.
Yeah, so I'd been in it for, I don't even know, 4 or 5 years at this point, just always thinking about doing it. And I've had the idea for the edamame in my brain for several years. But I had other friends that I saw go from enthusiast to maker, and kind of having discussions with them about the stuff they're working on. It's like, all right, I'm getting the itch. I'm going to do it. So I designed a couple of things. I was like, you know what, I can send this out to get printed, send it back. And I'm like, that's insane. I'm going to pay this much, probably make iterations. I know myself. I'm going to iterate 1,000 times. It might make more sense to just get a printer and do it. So I did my homework. I found an entry level 3D printer in Anycubic, and was like, okay, you know what? I'm not spending too much. If this doesn't work out, then whatever. I have a cool printer that I can make some cool stuff with.
And you could probably sell it later if the whole thing doesn't work out too.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't even that expensive. It was like a couple $100. So upgraded since then when I realized, okay, this is something I'm doing. What else? So what was the question? How did I go?
Well, basically the start of, so we now know, okay, so you had friends who were doing it and you kind of got surrounded by that. And of course, when you're hanging out with friends and you see friends kind of pushing the limits of what they normally do, you sort of go, oh, well, shit, that's how it's done. Maybe I could do that. So then you get into wanting to do spinners. You pick up a printer, and then what was that first process like of going, okay, I have this printer. Now, do I just make something round that spins around on a bearing? Like, what was that process?
I know. I can tell you exactly what I did. So, and it's interesting because it's coming full circle now. So I ended up, this was back when the Billion was incredibly difficult to get. I reached out to OneDrop. They didn't have anything. And I was like, I'm going to make my own solid body one and just, and get permission from them or something, And so I did that. My very first 3D print back in, I don't know, was it 22, was a Billion body. And I mean, here's the actual prototype of it now.
Oh, that's cool.
That Nick made with the resin that I made. But anyway, that was the first thing I did that I made. And then I was like, you know what? I put that on the sidelines and decided, I always wanted to make the edamame. It wasn't called the edamame in my head back then. So yeah, so ended up, I'm like, I always had this, like, just kind of wanted this, like, round flowing lobes, like, that blend into each other, almost kind of like you see with the knuck rollers, but except in a spinner style. And, and I just had the vision for it and made one, just designed one, printed it out. I had a few select people I trusted to share it with that I did, got some feedback from them back and forth, multiple iterations. How's this size? How's this size? How's this size? Just kind of like going through, like, as a user experience designer, I know I am not, you are not your user. That's something you have to constantly, hammer into your head, even though I kind of am, but you know what? I don't represent everyone. So
yeah, if you wanted a customer base of one, then perfect. Just make what you want to make. But if you want to sell it to a lot of people, you got to ask a lot of people.
Exactly. And so that's what I did. I shared it with people. I also designed it in a manner in which, so where do I have one laying around? Yeah. So it's long. This is 60 mil. Okay. And some people with small hands, they might not be able to get to the end. They're like, that's not for me. That's not for me.
Right.
But if you see, it kind of tapers up. So you can do pulls from the top. So the very top of it. So size no longer becomes an issue.
Okay. Yeah, that's very cool. I'm just thinking too, whenever you're showing any of these things, I'm thinking about half the people watching this just drooling every time you hold up, like, especially prototypes and stuff.
Should we make them drool a little more?
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that one in a few minutes, or maybe a bunch of minutes, but yeah, we're going to come back to that. So you started making it, and I mean, was there trepidation when you first went into it? Were you just like, screw it, I'm going to do this. I know I can do this. Or you're like, I don't know. And how many versions did you have to go through before you landed on one that you were happy with?
Mm-hmm. So I jumped right into it. I had experience with 3D printing because when I worked in jewelry, did a lot of resin printing, with all different types of resin. So I knew how to troubleshoot if things didn't work out. So that was not an issue. Dove right into it. The iterations, a lot. There were, I don't know exactly how many, a good amount. But what the most interesting thing is that the most iterations I had was on the buttons. So I couldn't find buttons that were perfect for it forever. I was like, it's too plain. I can't just have this plain thing. It needs to, and then in the end, it was like, okay, it's got to be a combination of kind of flat but kind of dipped. And I thought that was absolutely perfect and stood by that statement forever. Still think it's fantastic. But recently, I ended up, I really didn't like the profile after a while of it. So where did I put you at a moment? You could see in this one like that. It's straight, it's flat. For the thicks, it's fantastic. But the new versions that I have available are rounded, and the dish is a little deeper, and I feel it
Okay.
matches the aesthetic better. So anyway, completely going off topic. The
No.
the new the buttons that I thought were perfect are still fantastic, but these are not
So it
perfect.
almost sounds like then what took longer to figure out then? The spinner itself or the button?
Um. Oh, I don't know, man.
Like, are they equal? Like, did they both kind of take a lot of time? I'm not, it just sounds like it sounds more like you maybe came up with the shape more easily than configuring the button. And I don't know if that's true or not though. Is
No,
that
it is. It
yeah?
is true. The spinner I was able to get bang out very quickly. The iterations they took some time. The buttons I wasn't happy with them for a long time. I probably spent a month with different versions. Let's see if I had a bag I used to show when I first started of like the different buttons. Here we go. Yeah, here's my bag of buttons. So these are all the different variations.
Oh wow. So all different styles
Yeah.
and type. Do you ever go back to those? Because obviously you keep them for a reason.
This is more like, wow, look how much I went through, or
This
look
is
how much
just history. This is like the LIC museum.
Yeah, really. I mean, you could see elements of other ones in there. Like, I was like, oh, that's too much like the angle pads. I can't do that. Oh, this one, this is a speaker. No, that's like Motorsworks. I can't do that. It's like,
You should. It would be really cool one day to just lay them all out in a grid and take one picture of them and post them up to the group, and so people can just kind of like look at all of the process you went through to get to
mhm.
where you ended up with a design you're happy with.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Did you ever have designs that a road you went down and then just didn't work and you scrapped it?
Let's see. Yes, yeah, that happens all the time. Like usually I go into designing with intent. I'm like, this is what I do. I was trained in industrial design. I'll sketch. I'll draw things out. I'll sketch. And then when I get it onto the actual screen, it's like, you know what? This it was better as an idea than it
Yeah.
is in reality. And then there are ones where it's like that happens and I put it on the side and then I come back and I revisit. So I made a bar, a perfect example. I made a bar and I'm like, it's too much like a lot of what's out there. It's like it was like a combination of like a spinnement thing and a collision. I'm like, but you know what? I put it aside, forgot about it, came back recently, and I'm like, you know what if I add the LIC aesthetic to it where it's like everything is soft and rounded, and like, so here's an example. This is just a prototype still. I call it the smoothie bar because it's
Okay.
completely rounded. Come on, blurry thing
Yeah.
not
It's
working.
just it's the filter whatever is happening
Yeah.
on your camera, but yeah.
So that's an example of that. I mean, I have tons and tons. I have so many different designs that I just I abandoned, but I do come back to from time to time to say, is there anything there that I should be revisiting?
Well, and it's interesting too that you say, and I would think this happens for a lot of designers because as somebody like I'm a motion graphics designer, so I do a lot of like design animation stuff, and it kind of hit a nerve when you were saying how you sketch something and it's kind of a cool idea, right? And then you get into the computer and all of a sudden it's not a cool idea anymore. And I wonder how I think a lot of that comes from when you're sketching or when it's in your head, there's emotion attached to it. There's
Hmm.
like a feeling that goes along with it. And so you're sketching, you're creating this thing, and you have this idea in your mind and you sketch it out, but you're still attaching the emotion to the sketch because you made it. But then it gets into the cold software, right? And then it comes up on your screen and it's very just this sort of like soulless thing that's sitting there. So I can kind of I connect with that. Like, just when you have an idea and it's a sketch in your head and the sketch is great and it's organic, and then you get into the computer and you're like, where's that magic? Like, that just, it's not there anymore. And that's because you know, it takes a while to get that magic and to get that emotion built into it on the screen. So
Mhm.
I wonder then, is there a phase where it's almost like like fingers crossed, where you go from the sketch, you put it on the screen, you're like, okay, this looks good, but the emotion's gone for a minute until you print it off, and then you get it back in your hand, and then it's like a real thing you can connect with again.
It's interesting. Like, I totally, what you're saying resonates. It's like, yes, there is emotion when you're drawing it out. There are these grand ideas that you have, and now it's spilled out onto paper, and the cold, what do you say, the cold CAD software,
Yeah,
getting it in there. And yeah, I mean, it's not as stylistic as, say, coming from your hand. Not to say that I can draw very well. It's more like blurt the ideas out.
sure.
But I think where the magic sometimes happens for me the most is where you can turn it back into art again, into a craft again. So I'm not just using straight up CAD software. Yes, of course I do use that, but I'm also using sculpting software where I can take it in and I can take out. I have a stylus and I'm
Like
literally,
ZBrush or something, or
yes, that's exactly what I'm using. I'm using
okay.
ZBrush, so I can add dimensionality to it. You know what I mean? Like, make it more 3D. Like, if you see, like, I'll 1 second. I just put lotion on, and I'm trying to hand lotion. I'm trying to open up buttons. Here we go. So on the chunk, like, you can see the transition, how it's
Yeah,
smooth. And a lot of other spinners that are just CAD, it's straight up and down cuts.
right. Yeah,
Right? This is like it,
it's
and it's
organic.
on purpose. I sculpted it in. I sculpted it that way. I mean, there are some downfalls for that. Like, if you speak to some people that do manufacturing, they're like, "Hey, yeah, that looks great, but you just sculpted some undercuts that my tools can't get to." So it's
Yeah,
like, still to be aware of things like that.
it's like an architect designing a building and then handing it to a civil engineer, and the engineer's like, yeah, this looks nice, but dude, where do the pipes go? Like,
Mhm. Who needs
how do you
pipe?
expect? Yeah, exactly. We don't need pipes. We don't need, just do it. Just make it look nice. Okay, so we get to the point you're designing stuff, and then you first start with 3D because it's easy to access a 3D printer. Obviously, right? They're small. You can get it. You can keep upgrading it. Um, but when did the metal come into it?
Oh, right away. As soon as I could do it, I ended up shopping around different manufacturers. Nobody in the US wanted to touch my designs. They were like, I'm not set up for this. It's a lot of what they call surfacing. Like, I don't know. I'm not. Yes, I did CNC, but not like these guys. Like, not
Right.
like people like Nick or Alex and Jonas. But it's a lot of literally the tool going over every single surface very carefully in small increments,
Just to
small
shave it
steps.
down, right? To shape
Yeah,
it.
going back and forth, and it's like, okay, that will take absolutely forever. I am not equipped to get the sides because sometimes the sides of it, the tools, if you don't have a 5-axis machine, it's just up and down, side to side. It's not going around it.
Okay.
Whereas in China, a lot of these places offer those services. And so with this, I had to go. I don't think they didn't use 5-axis for this one because they ended up polishing everything anyway. But yeah, ended up finding a place in China that I knew a bunch of other makers had used. So I reached out to that shop, got a quote, opened up the pre-order, and just like, hey, this is something I want to get made. If other people like it, very
Right.
cool. And it wasn't even that many people. It was, for me back then, yes, that was a lot of people. I think there were 28 or 30 entries. I think it was 28.
And what was the material?
I did tungsten right off the bat
Tungsten. Okay.
because, yeah, I designed this with tungsten in mind. Of course, it's great in every other metal, but I'm a tungsten head, just like a bunch of these other lunatics you see in the groups. And
Well, tungsten's nice and light too, right? Like it, you
yeah,
have the advantage of the security of metal, but it's light. So yeah, I can understand that.
no,
So,
tungsten is actually really, really heavy. It's titanium that's
oh,
super
I'm
light.
sorry. I'm sorry. You're right. No, my mistake. I was thinking of titanium. So tungsten. So you went right for, yeah. So of course. So you just went right for like the big material, not even trying like something a bit cheaper or more affordable, like aluminum or something else. Like it was just straight into give you
Yeah,
some of the
I
best.
went right for it, and I didn't know if it was going to be well received or not. I had no idea. It's like, so I wanted to get other metals made too. This is all coming out of my pocket. I mean, the pre-order, yes, everyone's putting their trust in me, giving me money for that. The other metals is like, you know what? Let me try it out with some copper, titanium, and what else? I do stainless steel. Those are typically the metals that safe metals to try. Won't be
Right.
too crazy expensive. If people don't buy it, I'll still live. So in addition to that order, I placed the order for those. I'm like, please do the tungsten first, then get me these other metals afterwards. Shop, of course, they're like, yeah, we're done with the other ones. Now we're doing tungsten. I'm like, why? Like, I have people waiting. What are you doing? So they shipped me those. I sat on those. I refused to send those out until I fulfilled the orders for everyone that actually paid me for them. So
Okay.
here I am with this other stock. I'm like, am I going to be able to move this? Put it out. Like the tungsten, it went well. I think I have Jamie Phillips to probably thank for this. He posted this video where he's just gushing over it, and then everyone's like, I need one. So
Right.
thank you,
Right.
Jamie.
Right.
And so then I was like, I'll do some. I didn't have that much stock of edamames in the base metals because, like I said, this is all out of pocket. So I put it out there, and now everyone is like pissed off at me. They're like, why didn't you make enough? Da, 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 da. And I'm like, I didn't know if anyone would like this. I'm sorry. I'm like,
I'm curious, like, what was your initial investment to get those done? Because, like you said, that was out of your pocket, right? That was, yes, you had pre-orders, but you had to pay for it first. So,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what?
I don't know exactly. It was, it was close to $10,000.
Holy shit! So
Yeah.
that
So
was that was 10 grand out of your pocket.
it was combined. It was a lot of it was the
Yeah,
pre-order and then mixed with that. So yeah.
but you're still. I mean, the thing that people kind of forget is that when you take on a pre-order, you're taking their money.
Oh yeah.
So, and then
Stressing me
you're taking that money and you're sending it off. And so if something goes wrong, and if something goes horribly wrong, you're on the hook for all the
out.
money. So,
Yeah.
wow. So that initial one. Okay. So, curious. This was at the time. I'm not sure. I would assume, were you with your wife at the time? Like, was this something? Like she's kind of watching with you. Like, let's see how this goes because, um, obviously it's an investment for the both of you when you're dealing with
Mhm.
that much. What was that like?
It was, she fortunately she's like, I trust you with what you're doing. It's what happened? I
Like,
so
did
long
she
ago.
like the spinners in the beginning?
No, no, she has no interest in them. But what she did like was that the life it was giving me,
Okay.
designing and creating again. Being 3D modeling. And because the stuff that I used to do, I used to be so into it, and then I stopped doing it for like 6 years. So
And
it
that's
was
pretty incredible, right? Is having a partner that, even if they don't necessarily understand the product or get that feeling from the product that you do, uh, it sounds like she was amazingly supportive and just saying,
Mhm.
"Go ahead, try it. Let's see if it works."
Oh
So
yeah, she's
that's
been
that's pretty awesome.
she's been phenomenal. Like this past weekend, or this past few weeks, I actually made an official business, made an LLC, and she's been helping me with that because I don't know what I'm doing, man. So she helped me set all that up, and then she's like, "You need to stop with the drops, stop with the susses, just for a little while. Let's organize everything." And I'm like, I can't just stop.
Ah, the and I've talked to a bunch of makers about the benefit and the kind of the curse of, like, sign up sales, drops, all that stuff. So pre-orders. Um, Obviously, people are always asking, when's the next pre-order? When's the next pre-order? Uh, but is you still do pre-orders at this point, or are we going mostly with drops now or sign up sales? Like,
I'm trying to limit pre-orders only because of the amount of time and stress that goes into it. So the first one, It was stressful, but it's nothing compared to the chunk one where people kind of like have an idea of what the products are now. They know they want to go in. So it's a little bit, there's more people that were going into this. So now it's like a lot more money to have in the back of my mind knowing that I'm responsible for.
Sure.
And then when it comes time for fulfillment, remember I work full time.
Yeah.
I have a family with two little kids that I am they come first. So it's like all
course.
that, and then at the end of the day, I can do this. And now it's a matter of, okay, I need to fulfill how many orders, and you know what I mean. So it's like it's time consuming, it's stressful. And up until I had the website, I was like, I had one of my admins and I were just reaching out to people to collect payment for it. Just all these things that go on behind the scenes that take away so much of your time. I'd be up until like the wee hours of the morning, with spreadsheets, and it's like I don't. That's not fun for me.
No, dude, that's the death of any creative person, right? Is business.
Yeah.
Which is why in any good business, like in the agency I'm in, like where there's 3 partners, there's 2 creatives, myself and one other guy, and then the third guy, he runs the company.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone has to be the parent, right? When it's designers, because if we have to parent, we don't design anymore. Like nothing kills a good creative flow, like having to write an email or filling out something. So with the spinners right now, are they still done overseas? Like you don't have the machinery now yourself to make these, do you?
No, I don't. So it's a combination. Initially, the first pre-order I did was in China, and the communication wasn't the best. So I was like, I'm going to try out a different shop. And the minis that you are seeing being released now, those are from the different shop. I had major issues with that shop. Their communication was better, but the product, there were a lot of back and forth. I had to send it out to Joey to do all the finishing for me. So things that should have been done and available like in, I don't know, in the summertime are just now coming out. So it's like when you're dealing with China, issues like that. But when you're dealing with places in the US, like I've been working with Nick a lot lately on all the buttons. So he did the 2.0 buttons. He's going
Who's
to be
Nick?
doing Nick McKenty of FTO.
Okay.
Full Throttle Originals. So he's freaking amazing machinist, by the way. So yeah, he did these buttons. He did all the buttons, all the different drops I've been doing. Those have been Nick. So these Ultim ones here. And until recently, he wasn't really set up necessarily to do the edamames and things like that, just because of the organic nature of it and the time, and it would have cost a fortune. But I have been bugging him like crazy. Nick, if you're watching this, give it another chance. But so with that, I had to do that in China, potentially bring it back to the States, but that would also drive up the cost because, of course, it's labor here is a lot more expensive than their materials as well. So it's a combination. I'm also speaking with Alex McGee from Black Dog. He is willing to take on giving some of my designs a shot. So that's exciting too. Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming that it's almost more nerve-wracking for you because unlike designers who are making sliders and stuff and who are machining them in their own shop, they're in complete control all the time. Mm-hmm. Whereas you're taking people's orders or people's money in, and then you're just sending it off and waiting and hoping that this is the one time things don't screw up.
Yes, but I have confidence in the shop I'm using now. Major confidence. I've the last bunch of batches I got from them have just been amazing. Like they've been spot on. So I have no doubt that they're going to do a great job. The only doubt that I have is the time frame. So I remember the first time around, they're like, it's going to be 5 weeks. It was 5 months. So this time around, I'm telling everyone this could take some time. So sit back. I will keep everyone updated. And for those watching, here's your update on the status of it. I submitted the order at the best time in the world, right before Chinese New Year when China closed down. So production is likely going to be starting, in the near future. It hasn't actually started yet. So there's your update. We might have to remove that.
So I mean, and that actually makes us a little interesting, because a lot of times I'll ask somebody what their favorite material is to work with. But I guess in your case, does that factor in? Like, because if you're not actually having to be the one to put up with certain materials that might be more difficult than others, does the material matter to you, in the sense that would you shy away from a material, or is it just kind of all the same, in the sense that the manufacturing is taking place at a company that's capable of dealing with most materials? So you just say, well, it's more of a cost issue, and so now I'm going to do a run of more expensive material.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a matter of course, yes. What am I interested in? But at the end of the day, it's like this is more for what is everybody interested in.
Right.
It's going to be a given. Whatever design I'm going to make, it's going to be tungsten, because that's my favorite. It's just going to happen. But I know that the standards, the staples that people really like, which are stainless steel, titanium, and copper, that's going to be a given also. But then it's the other stuff that I'm just now for the first time, dipping my toe into the pool with. It's like Mokume is the first exotic I did. I knew people were interested in it, so I was like, okay, that would be cool to do. I'd love to do other exotics, but there are minimum order requirements for these places. So if I don't meet those, then I can't have them made. But there are some special instances where that can be done. These places understand, hey, exotic, like rods of this metal, whatever, the material's expensive. You're not going to make 100 pieces of, zircotai or something. Like, no, not.
Right.
So they'll as long as you have another order going, they're like, all right, we can do this for you. And that's what I might be doing, down the line, to be able to get some of that out there for people that want it.
Okay, let's talk about the name, the edamame.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that come from? Like, of all the names out there, how did you land on a vegetable? Right. And I understand kind of the shape. Like, I sort of get the reference to it, but what was it? Was it the name? I mean, well, you had said you came up with the shape first and the name later.
The name came later. So I mentioned before, I had a group with a handful of other people that I just chatted with regularly, like about fidgets in general. As I'm sure many watching have that something similar going on. But I had this group, and those are the ones that I would share images with. Hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And one of the guys was like, you need to call this the edamame, because that looks exactly like an edamame. If you don't call it the edamame, then I'm never talking to you again. So that was Chad. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name right hard. Okay, I tried. So hasn't been around a lot lately. Miss you, Chad. But that was him. He's the one who named it for me.
Wow. So in LIC history, and for everybody else that loves your stuff, Chad came up with the name.
Mm-hmm.
What about the other names then? Did that kind of start a process where you would look to other people for inspiration on naming, or did you end up, like, in the end, were you just kind of naming them yourself?
Yeah, I mean, there's not that many out there to I guess, to go down the line. I have like I've been kind of like sticking with the theme of mame. So I've got edamame, the mini mame.
Yeah.
What else? The chunky mame, because it's kind of chunky. So there's those. I was kind of sticking with that theme. Then I have this one that's coming out, which is Lycia.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So is that like a new form factor for you?
No, I mean, I think it has the bulbous ends, kind of like,
yeah,
the background so that you can see virtual background. No. Yeah, I'm in my office / bedroom, not the studio today, so don't mind the mess.
That's okay. And the filter doesn't start fighting with
with this
stuff.
Yeah, no, this is a 28 millimeter button on the Lycia body. So the ends are bulbous. This is something that I got help with the community on. I think I have some older ones laying around. Maybe I don't. Anyway, I made a design for it, printed it out, asked people's opinions on it, This is one of the earlier ones.
Okay.
It's this is not. No. So the earlier ones were thinner. Shared it out. There were opinions. Some people were like, I absolutely love it. This is great. Other people were like, oh, I don't know, might be too thin, da 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 da. So I picked a handful of people that loved it, people that didn't like it, sent them the prototype. And I was like, tear it apart. Tell me you love it. Tell me you hate it. Just be honest. And the feedback that I mostly got was, this is great. I absolutely love it as is. But it would be nicer if it was a little bit thicker. And that was consistent across from the people that loved it and the people that hated it. So went back, I pulled up the tops, made it more round, more rotund, if you will.
Yep.
And then had that scoop going a little deeper. And I think that with the help of the community, it turned into something absolutely beautiful. So
Yeah,
I'm
that looks pretty amazing.
Thanks. I'm grateful for everybody's feedback. It's just a matter of right now getting these in a place where I'm ready to get them out there.
What do you think? What's the timeline of something like that to get that out there?
So with that was from the new shop that I tried out, and they weren't too familiar with spinners. So they had some issues. It took forever for them to get it right. Like they had balancing issues that they had to sort out. And so
because balance is everything, right? In a spinner, everything. It's got to be perfect on all sides.
And so everyone's like, where's the tungsten? Where's the tungsten? Well, tungsten's not easy to balance. And I don't want to send out a wobbly piece. And that's why it took a while to get the tungsten ready. The manufacturers knew that I'm not going to accept it if it wobbles at all whatsoever.
So you just mentioned you just said tungsten is not easy to balance.
No, it's not.
Why is that? And is it different than other metals in terms of balancing? Is it more of a challenge?
Okay. I'm no expert in this, but this is what I do know. The way tungsten is made, I think it's like from powder that's pressured together and heated up. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But it could be porous. It could be holes inside it, pockets inside it. So it's like, okay, it's a little bit lighter on this side. That's because there might be a pock in there, a hole in there.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so it's just like a matter of, okay, some people balance it out by the holes that are underneath it, the speed holes. Other people balance it out from kind of sanding down different bits of it. So it can be difficult. And I think that was what took so long with the edamames to the 5 weeks to 5 months. I think it was the balancing because it had to be perfect.
That's really interesting. I had no idea that was an issue with tungsten. And I guess, yeah, that would make it real. Like you wouldn't pick up on it if it was a slider because who cares if the balance is a little bit off because the magnets do a lot of the work. But for a spinner, yeah, balance is everything. So that's I thought about tapping into my my old world of jewelry. I still know a lot of people that do casting. I'm like, oh, could I cast a spinner? And I'm like, that would be a nightmare because porosity is another thing that you have to deal with forging something like that. Have you ever thought of, even as a one-off or something, but combining a spinner with jewelry in some way, or like precious version of a spinner, or just like incorporating somehow, like making jewelry out of it? Like, is something like that ever on the horizon, even if it's just a personal project?
It's definitely crossed my mind. Like I thought of like this, like, I don't know, like imagine having like a necklace or a bracelet with these little charms of your favorite spinners going across from your favorite makers. How cool would that be? Logistical nightmare to coordinate with all these people, but that would be cool. I've thought about things like when I did jewelry, a big major portion of what I did, it was around the time where there was this Pandora bead craze, and everyone was like, there were these beads of everything you can imagine. And so I was doing a lot of that. So I have experience in not just making beads, but organic beads. Like I would make a teddy bear bead, like it was all sculpted and it looked really cool. And it's like, I could make beads there, and I kind of see that as jewelry, but it's also this whole other part of EDC. And so it's like, I'm kind of like looking over in that direction right now, just because the challenge of doing that for EDC and the whole idea of mixing and matching. Like I spoke with other people in the community that are into them, and they're just so passionate about it. And it's like someone like Tim Blimbus, He's so into it and he's so passionate about it. And he shows me these like combinations and stacks of them, and I'm like, that is freaking cool, being able to mix and match. So that's not necessarily jewelry, but it's something that I'm thinking about a lot lately.
Yeah, I mean, you could almost, looking at the edamame, like even just the shape of one of the wings, right? Like that lends itself to almost like a teardrop style,
Mm-hmm.
whether the earrings or charms or, yeah, I could see you actually doing a lot of different things like that. Is there ever though a crossover where it's like functional jewelry, like something that is still fidgetable? Um, I don't know, right? I have no idea,
Mm-hmm.
but like a lot of time, I mean, obviously, like we all see the ratchet ring and stuff, and sort of these spinner rings and things. So rings can step into the fidget world, and they are jewelry, but they're also limited by size and your other fingers getting in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there? I don't know. Is there anything out there, a different form of jewelry that can still be fidget, like whether it's even saying like throwing, like I said, like a precious stone into a spinner, like a button that has a diamond in it,
Mm-hmm.
or and obviously again we're talking like this would be really prohibitively expensive, but like you were saying, if you could kind of lean back into your jeweler's past, what would you love to make out of that? Like, is there ever like a holy shit, man, if I had access to all these things and budget wasn't an issue, like what would be the peak sort of crossover of jewelry and spinner?
So I've thought about this, and never going to happen because I don't know that anybody would be able to pay for something like this. But imagine an edamame completely paved, covered in micro diamonds
Right.
everywhere. That would be sick. So that's, yes, I thought about how cool that would be. I even thought about actually mocking that up in CAD. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, if anyone wants one that's watching, I'd be down to make it because it would be
And again,
amazing.
you were a jeweler, right? So that's something that kind of fits in your wheelhouse a bit.
Oh
Like
yeah, I could totally do that. I totally do that. Another thing I thought about that is pretty cool is, like you said like put a diamond in a button. I thought about things like, what if you put a cabochon inside a button, or
what
like
is
an
that?
oval, like it's a stone. It's a
Okay.
stone that's like shaped. So it'd be like a round stone with a dome on it, like
Okay.
inset, like bezel set into a button. I'm like, that would be awesome. But the moment it fell, it would just break into a million pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's true, because I've thought about materials like stone. I always thought like, I wonder if somebody could ever do, how people find like fossil stones all the
Hmm.
time, and then they turn them into like marble counters and things, and so I always thought, well, if you found like a precious stone or something to that effect, but you're right, like the minute you drop it, right, these things don't hold up well to impact
Yeah.
and stuff. But it would be cool. I guess it really would just be like an ornamental thing. Like you do it and somebody would just keep it in a case and just look at it.
Hmm.
Just know they
Yeah.
have the only one. We're gonna talk about the auction. So
The
I have
auction.
written down in my note,
Let's check
um,
on it. I'm going to check on it right now.
like I have my note currently, you probably can't see it, but it
Hmm.
says auction, holy shit. So the last I checked this morning before the interview, it was up to 1650. Now I don't know if it's gone beyond that or not.
Oh, I'm checking. It's at 1700 now. I suspect
1700.
I suspect if there's going to be any movement on it, it might be as it's closing. Um, I don't know. Like I wanted this to be something that was like special. Like I've been. It's two things. I've been seeing like all my stuff on the secondary moving at these insane prices, and it's like
Right.
I'm not seeing any of that. I want a little taste, but I don't want all my product to be priced at that. So
Sure.
one time auction on something super special. I was chatting with one of my admins about it, and they were like, because I let everyone know, listen, I'm going to be doing a sus or a drop for these, so you don't need to pay astronomical prices to get it. But if you absolutely want a set of both and are willing to, here's your opportunity to do it. But if I just did one, would it be special enough for an auction? And I was like, no, probably not. I mean, yes, but not as special as having two. So that's why full size and mini. You get a complete set. It was it's incredibly special to me because I had never etched before. I did all this research on it, talking with all different people that do it. And I was like, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it. I was worried that it would be imbalanced if I had done it. And it's like, here, you lift it up from the table. It's balanced.
So it's
Yeah. So no issues with that. Let's see this one.
And the thing about an auction is you aren't setting the price at all. You're just leaving it up to other people, and they're deciding the value.
Yeah. Put it up and see what happens.
Yeah, which is actually a really, I mean, because there's, lately in sort of the community, there's always sort of the talk of, the sign up sales, the giveaways, and people, inevitably there's always going to be people that don't win, right? That don't even win the opportunity to buy, and that's just the draw. But doing an auction is actually like a really kind of genius way, in a sense of you just putting up the product and saying, I'm out. Like, you guys decide. Like, you set a minimum bid at, I think, what did you start at, like $5 or or whatever, and you just, so I find that actually a really, really like a really almost like honorable way of doing it, that you're not setting the price, you're not setting the value at all. And in the end too, it's also then it's smart because you also can't be criticized for setting a price that might be high, because of course there is always one of the things we always get is a lot of items are priced really high, and to your point, on the secondary market they just exponentially, right, they just they blow up so high in terms of cost. And most of the time, so that's not the maker's fault at all. Like, the maker typically prices things at a reasonable rate that the market can handle, and then it's the people, like it's the users, it's the buyers that actually then set these crazy prices on things, and then other people will buy them. So I just thought that was kind of a really cool way, and it's a really interesting way too, because it's a good way to kind of gauge what the community is willing to spend, because it wasn't just like one or two bids. Like, last I checked, I mean, there was a good amount. It was like 10 bids or more. So that's gotta feel great in one sense, but in the other sense, is there ever like almost like a terrifying moment of like Jesus, somebody thinks my stuff is worth this much? Like, what do I do with that? Like, what do I do with that weight on my shoulders, that people are now looking at my products like they are worth, a monthly rent payment or something? Like, that's got to be some responsibility that comes with that. Like, how does that feel when you see those prices kind of go up? And more importantly, like, what does your wife think when she sees your stuff going up that high?
Well, it blows my mind. Like, I really, honest to God, wasn't sure that anybody would be interested in these at all. I'm like, I designed these are I think they're great. The people I showed it to think it's great. Like the fact that people not only like it, but they're willing to pay these prices, it floors me every time. I feel absolutely, honored and privileged that people have that interest. The weight it has, oh my gosh, like any design I'm working on now, it's like, will I ever live up to the expectations of the edamame? Yeah. It's like, and I kind of have to put that in the back of my mind, like, it's okay. These are fidgets. These are things that are going to make people happy. Leave it at that, and don't worry about I guess whatever metric you call success.
Well, and a lot of people, like, they see it as art as well, right? Like, they're not just buying a toy. And I mean, of course, anytime you mention fidgets to anybody outside of the community, the first thing they say is, "You mean those toys?" Right? Everybody, every single person. And then when they kind of realize it, they're shocked. They're shocked at the value of these things. They're shocked at how much people will pay for them. Of course, they think it's crazy. And yet, people spend thousands of dollars like on vinyl or something, and where other people go, well, you're an idiot, that exists on an MP3, like, or you could just download it and stream it. Why would you pay that much for something? So, I find that people have to have some kind of a hobby or some kind of strong interest to appreciate the cost of something like that, right? Like you almost have to be a collector. Like if you're a user, then you just get fidgets that are a lot like more the 3D printed fidgets or things that you can just afford because you want them because they're fun and you get enjoyment from them. But once you start becoming a collector, then the stuff makes sense. Like then you kind of understand spending and investing into something. So I'm sure for whoever is going to win, like the Mokame auction, they're not like walking to the mall, spinning.
Oh yeah,
spinning this thing, right? Like it's safe. It's sitting at home on a shelf or in a case or something where it's like, it's precious. Like it's a work of art. It's an investment because that's the other thing is that the insane but amazing thing about this community is that whatever they pay for it, if they eventually sell it, it'll be worth even more than what they paid for it.
It's bizarre. It blows my mind every time I think about it.
So it is kind of investment for a lot of people.
And as a collector myself, I can't tell you. Like I mentioned it in the posting, but it's going to be hard for me to let this go. Like I put so much into this thing. It's like it's become my baby. It's going to be somebody else's baby soon.
Okay, so let's go. So this is a new thing I'm doing now, and but I think it's kind of fun, and I want to do it for when we interview people that are in. I gotta stop saying we. There's no we. It's me. But when I interview people that have a group formed around their product, I want to ask the group. I want to field for questions because a lot of times after the end of the interview, some of the comments I get are, "Oh, I wish you would ask this," or "I wish you would ask that." So I'm going to now look at and read off some of the questions. And if we can do kind of like a quick fire round of answers, let's go through these, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. When did you ask for questions?
This morning. The post is there. Okay, let's look at, you know what? I'm looking on my phone. So if we go right to the beginning, so Alberto, and now this is where I slaughter all the names. But so Alberto Amarim just said he didn't have a question necessarily, but was just talking about the process, which we've covered. So I think we kind of talked about that. He just sort of wanted to know, were there any designs that you tried to make that didn't work out, which I kind of snuck in that question earlier because I'd already read his question. Jonathan was asking, will there be any mini edamame or regular edamame pre-orders in the near future?
Pre-orders for those, no. I've kind of the way I'll be working moving forward is I don't plan on doing pre-orders for existing designs anymore. It will likely be few and far between. I was planning on only doing one pre-order per year, but now this whole billion business might have to do it in advance just because getting it made in the US is going to be a lot more expensive than in China. Cannot front that money myself.
Right.
So if I do the billion, that's probably going to be a pre-order thing. But like I said, that's going to be limited just because I still work full time, still have a family,
Sure.
Don't have the time to take on multiple pre-orders in a year.
Okay. Fair enough. There you go, Jonathan. Errol was asking. Now, this one, I don't know if you can answer this one. This one might be a bit tough to answer, but we're going to throw it out there anyways. So Errol's asking, who does he most look up to in the fidget community and why, and who or what inspires him in his designs the most?
Oh, man, who do I look up to? I don't know. I feel like this community, it's just like, I think what makes it so special is that the way it's the community itself, the way people come together and we're sharing this passion for these obscure things that the rest of the world doesn't know about.
Right.
And I kind of, I guess I'm inspired a lot by people and sharing and enjoying. But as far as like design inspiration, I think that comes from, I don't think it comes directly from the fidget community. I kind of know I gravitate to what I like, and I kind of, I guess, put that into my designs. I take that back. I like hard edge things like this design, for example, but you don't see mine like that.
Yeah, yours are very organic, like very rounded and soft.
And I think I think I draw a lot of inspiration from like, I don't know, like designers like I used to be obsessed with Kareem Rashid. He's an industrial designer who used to, if anybody ever has like Method soap, it's like bubbly and round and like, curvaceous, like things like that. So if I see things like that out in the world, that inspires me. You might have seen a post earlier on in the group where I took my kids to the children's museum in Queens, and they had these chairs with these little patterns going around, and I'm like, that looks so freaking cool. That's a set of buttons right there. So I went back, I took one of my buttons and I kind of like put it on a Dremel and started like etching it as it spun, and like boom. You might have seen Paul, I sent it to him, he's got it. So like things like that, I'm drawing inspiration from, like the world around you, like from places that you don't really expect it when
Well,
you're not looking for it.
can I ask then, and I don't know, maybe if it's subconscious or maybe it's not at all, but so your designs, you have young kids, right?
Mhm.
And your designs seem very rounded and soft and welcoming in a way and safe almost, as opposed to like hard angles and jagged hard things. Is there any kind of even a subconscious influence, like because you're a father with young kids and so your world, I know that when I had young kids, the world was, you wanted those safe things, you wanted those nice round things, you don't want the dangerous sharp things. uh,
Mhm.
I don't know, is there anything there that maybe part of the influence, the emotional influence, comes from having
Could
small
be.
kids?
I mean, it could be a very subconscious thing. It's not something that I was like, I'm going to make the safest spinner in the world. But then again, I mean, they're soft enough. This can go down like a pill. Ooh.
Right. Yeah, let's get super dark about it. Okay, so so that was Errol's question. So I've got one for Evan. Now this is kind of a longer one, but I think we've covered most of it. But I'm just going to kind of read it out. I'm also I'm going to put these up on the screen at the same time. Um, so Evan is asking, my question for the maker: How do you have the time? You have a young family and what appears to be a full-time job aside from LIC. What is that job, which we've covered? Does it lend itself to the EDC world or completely different field? We've talked about that. Is your wife into fidgets? It's a hard no. Um, do you just sit at home at night after a long day of work and dealing with bedtime and just sketch shit on your computer? So I guess it's really, maybe paraphrasing the question, but how much of your free time is left after like you come home from work, you've got family, and you've got free time. So
Mhm.
that free time, how much of that is spent on spinners?
Recently, I've been kind of reprioritizing and putting spinners like the moment the day is done, the moment I leave the studio and I'm home, I'm home. The only type of work I might be doing is answering any messages that I might be getting, which I need to kind of curb at nighttime also. I find that I've been doing that a lot to the point where one of my kids is like, put your phone down, daddy. I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I know that's hard.
But
That's
like I haven't really does I haven't opened up CAD in a bit because I designed, I don't know, I probably have 20 designs ready to go at this point. It's just limitations of manufacturing and time. So I have a bunch that I'm good to go on. Some are variations of the edamame, some are completely new designs. Um, so I haven't needed to sit down and do that in quite some time. But there are other things that, you know, that do take time, like the resin stuff. I want so badly to put more resin out there. A lot of people going crazy over the purple pieces that I've teased of the mini mames. And something I'm thinking about doing, which is creating a rainbow line of them, limited runs, kind of similar to what Jason does, where it's like, okay, here's maybe 10 or 15 and red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, violet, and just, thought it'd be cool for collectors to be able to kind of get that. But it's like, it's time. So it's like,
yeah.
it's a matter of at the end of the workday. Usually, what I'll do is sometimes I'll spend half my morning working at home, go to the studio. I have a setup there for a computer monitor, continue working there. If I need anything on the printer, let it run while I'm doing my day job. End of the day comes, 5 o'clock comes, close that computer. I've got an hour before I got to get the kids. And now I'm like, okay, how many things can I bang out in resin? Oh, I need to clean up whatever's on the printer. I can, so it's like when it was home and the kids would go to bed, I would be there sitting over my garbage, sanding stuff and making stuff. But now I'm not doing that anymore because the studio, it's not far, but it's not in my house anymore. So I can't get that stuff done. But it's also been nice to kind of have a little separation. I'm not really answering the question, but I guess, Evan, I'm not doing it well. I'm not doing the juggle too well.
No, but I mean, that is an answer, though. I mean, I don't think, as much as people want stuff, right? As much as people want like makers to be pumping stuff out, I don't think anybody should want a maker to have that balance be so far into the fidgets that it then becomes more important than the family, the well-being, the whatever, because then you're just going to burn out. And then you burn out, well, you're not making anything anymore for anybody. So a slower pace at least is a healthier pace, and it means a greater chance of continuing to have products people love if you're taking your time. So I think you answered it great. So we had another question about the pre-order, which we've already answered. So I have a very important question from Dominic. This one might kind of rip the lid off of the secrets of the LIC world. Do you karaoke, and what is your go-to song?
Oh man, I haven't done karaoke in I don't know how long. My sister's really into it, so whenever she would have birthday parties, it would always be karaoke, and I would do something where you don't really need to sing. So my go-to was always some like Nirvana. I'd be like, I could do "Smells Like Teen Spirit."
Right, so screaming. That works. That's good. There you go. There's your answer, Dominic. So last one is just from Max, and he's asking, what's your future button plans? I think LIC has some of the more interesting buttons with emphasis on function.
Okay, so buttons. I didn't plan on making all these crazy buttons, but what happened is it's interesting. So I had the edamames, and then I had this other batch of minis, and the LIC is all being produced. And I kind of in my mind had this time frame. It should be here at this time. This time I'm still releasing other edamames. I kind of wanted there to be momentum. So it was like in the lull between spinners, if there's interest, I could just put buttons out there. And there was initially interest in the resin buttons. I wasn't planning. Those were prototypes. People were like, gotta have it, send it over, please make these available. Made them available, had some QA issues on some of them, refined it to a place where now there shouldn't be any more issues. So by the way, for anyone watching that might have had an issue, that's been solved, that's fixed. Anyway, people seem to really like the thick version of the edamame buttons. I'm a big fan of that, but I'm a little biased. Then I made tea times. I kind of wanted to make a dish button. Made those in resin initially, and then I got some made in metal and in Ultim. I haven't released those yet. I have plans to. I just haven't had the time. So it's a matter of assembly. I have a whole bunch of button halves that I need to put grub screws in and assemble them for everybody. So these are the tea times in Ultim. I'm actually calling these whiskey times because they're a darker amber and they look more like whiskey. So these are going to be whiskey.
Oh, that's
times.
Cool. That's great.
So there's that. A lot of people have been asking about the 2.0 buttons, and a lot of people have been asking about thicks. So the thicks were so popular that with the Mokame, I had them come standard with thicks, which are slightly thicker than the other ones.
Right.
I'm considering opening up a pre-order for some buttons that I'd be sending over to FTO for Nick to make. I have a series of during this call, actually, our conversation right now. Nick sent me a message of an image of a bunch of buttons that I have done in titanium. So I have some mini mommies on the way in titanium. I'm going to be putting those new buttons on it. Have some extras of those. I'll have those available to everyone. I might just do a combined drop of that and some tea times. And I guess it depends on if there's any interest. I'm going to be redesigning the Lycia button. Yes, I have them all manufactured, but I'm not happy with it now because it doesn't look like this button on the side. So I am probably going to remake those. So
Oh,
it's not
okay.
big
It's
and
a little
flat.
bit more. Yeah, the other one's a bit. The mommy's a
Yeah.
little bit more rounded.
And it's 28. No, those are 30 mil. So those, yeah, no, 28. No, sorry, 28 millimeters buttons. I guess I can give a teaser of something that's 30 mil. Mega mini mommy. So it's a mini and a mommy blown up with a 30 millimeter button.
Wow.
So this will hopefully be on the horizon at some point.
Dude, there's so many new things people are seeing today from this interview. From karaoke to new mommy designs. I think we're done. We've been going for a while, and I'm so appreciative, and I'm sure everybody watching is so appreciative of your time. It's always incredible when somebody who's as busy as you are can give I mean, there's almost an hour and a half so far on a Friday morning, which is not an easy thing to do. So thanks so much from me for giving me the time. I'm honored that you came on, and I think I can safely say from everybody watching, thank you so much for doing what you do, and for today coming in and sort of giving us a little insight into your world, just a little window into the life of LIC.
I appreciate it, Sean. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure. And yeah, thank you everybody for having interest in my stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure that interest is going to go for a long time. So, okay. Well, thanks so much, Jamie. And hopefully we'll see you on the channel again. All right. Thanks for watching, gang.